is, where is our treasure? And you might be looking at this picture saying, oh, looks like a talk on tithing. But no, it's not. Not today. That'll be another day. But some people look at their lives and think that this is what their treasures are. It is their time, their talent, or their money. But that's not what we're talking about today. And this is the season of Lent. And this Lenten season, we've been talking about life. And over the past few weeks, we've explored life from the aspects of birth and rebirth and choosing to be born. And through this exploration, we opened up to that I am and all the possibilities in us in that sphere of consciousness, haven't we? And we've talked about that. And we touched on the aspect of denial, that idea of removing anything that's standing in the way of our highest good. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a closer look at putting all of this into action and living it in our lives. And what this can mean for our spiritual beingness, capital B, and all the while we'll discover where our treasures truly are. So let us affirm first our statements of truth together, please. I am a child of God. I am deserving of good in my life. I am accepting my good now. So many of you might worry about money or paying the bills or how you were going to eat. And maybe you're not doing that right now, but there probably was a time in your life that you did worry about those things, right? It might have been yesterday. It might have been 5 years ago. It might be whatever. But what happened during that time? We all survived, didn't we? And we all prospered, really, because we're a lot better off today than we were in those moments. And even in the stress of maybe you were trying to pay your bills yesterday and you were stressing over it. Today is a new day, and it's a lot better place to be, isn't it? Yes. So how did this happen? How did all of a sudden, all this stress and chaos, and the poor guy stressing over all that stuff, how did that happen that it no longer bothered us? Perhaps it was, hold on, it was our magical fairy godmother who came out and waved her wand and said, poof, all of this will be okay for you. No. Maybe not. But it might have felt like something like that happened. Or maybe, you just turned your awareness to a new direction, and that allowed something new to pop up. And maybe it was the check that showed up in the mail that you weren't planning on. Or maybe you attained a new job. But the end result was that we were no longer in that same place, were we? Oh. And what made this happen? And better yet, why can't we always make this happen? And also, and what is the way of our thinking, what is in the way of our thinking that keeps us from experiencing treasures every moment of the day? These are questions we need to ponder for ourselves. And I'm not giving you the answer today, but I'm going to help you find some solutions maybe to some of the issues you've had. If you can name one thing that Jesus taught us, what would it be?
Love one another.
Love one another. And that's what I have up here. Love. Love, period. And that's good. So do you love your enemies?
Yes.
Can you claim you have no enemies?
Yes.
Even better. And believe it or not, loving those whom you find it difficult to love is a requirement for spiritual birth. And okay, I know I've said it, I've laid down a spiritual law for you, and maybe that's a difficult one for you to achieve. But I'm not here to beat you over the head and say anything bad against you. What I'm here to tell you is that we have to take heed to these things, these spiritual laws. We have to listen to them, and we have to live from them. And that can be hard sometimes. But when we speak about new birth and life, we have to remove any stumbling blocks that are in the way of our success. And feeling hate for anyone is a huge stumbling block, isn't it? It's like that rock that's in front of the tomb where they buried Jesus. When we allow ourselves to get caught up with the tragedies of the world, or we lash out at others from that state of mind, even when you're listening to the news or you're reading stuff on the internet and you lash out from that state of mind, you're putting more of that hate and that energy out there in the universe. And what is that going to do for us? It's going to come back slap us in the face. We can't send that energy out. We have to switch, because that's error thinking. No matter what it is, the best thing we can do is reflect back to the universe from that place of love. That place of love that Jesus spoke of. Because if we can do that, that shifts everything, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Because there would be no more darkness or ignorance mirrored over and over again, centuries after centuries. We cannot get to the place of love with any kind of negative thinking in our realm of living. However, we can create a world of change by changing our thinking. And one of my LUT classmates, Reverend Charles Foley, has his own ministry titled Love Period. And Charles gave me this t-shirt, just mailed it to me, for my birthday. He gave Reverend Warren one too, but he has this campaign of spreading love, period, out into the world. And one of his most greatest things is that Wayne Dyer latched onto his t-shirt, and he wears it quite often. You see him up there. And he was actually, Charles was actually, this is Charles, and that's Wayne Dyer, of course. And he was actually on stage with him. And it was a powerful moment for Charles in his ministry because, you know, he knew that there was somebody out there with a bigger voice than his sharing that message. But Wayne Dyer said, loving people live in a loving world. Hostile people live in a hostile world. Same world.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we have to be living in a what?
Loving world.
Absolutely, a loving world, and that's what we need to send out. And you know, even when people are over there fighting, I know I want to be protected and I want to live in a country where I have freedom and everything, but I'm going to send love. I'm sending love to all of our troops that are going over there. I'm sending love to all of our people in Washington, D.C. I'm sending love to all the people that live over there, and even the people that are fighting against us, because they don't know. And if that shift happens for one consciousness at a time, so be it. Pretty soon we're going to get them all, aren't we?
Yes.
But I included a blessing in the bulletin, and Charles he sends this out with his t-shirts, the quote from Wayne Dyer, and on the other side is the blessing. And I included it in our bulletin today as our affirmation, and I'd love for us to say that together, and I also have it up here, of course, for us too. But let's say it together. Today I will see only love, hear only love, think only love, speak only love, pray only love, and be only love in all things. I deeply and completely love myself. My heart is filled with unconditional love. I am one with the Spirit of love. I am blessed, and I am a blessing to all. And so it is. Amen. And that's his website, Love Period. And yes, you can go online and buy the t-shirts from him. And I'm sure he would appreciate that. Someday I told him when we get the bigger church, he's going to come and talk for us and do a workshop or something. But anyway, so we practice getting into the state of mind, and this is a tool we can use to practice getting in that state of mind. And it can be something you carry with you, and if you switch your thinking from that of love, you can easily pull that out and repeat that again. You know, and when we do that, what we're doing is we're moving down that spiritual path of understanding, and we're getting ourselves prepared for even more blessings to come forth. And say you're moving along and something happens. That person comes into your life that yanks your chain. Everybody got one of those? Yeah. But when they do that and you react out of defense, don't beat yourself up. Don't get your floggers out. You know, don't do that. Just tell yourself, oh, I want to send them love today. And stop and take a breath and repeat that prayer, or just say to yourself, I am love. They are love. We are love. Simple expression of focusing back in on that love. And that's all we have to do. And that gives birth to that new state of beingness in our life. That gives birth to us being in a new place. And that's what will reap the rewards as we move through. So does this mean that we begin to have treasures we deserve? Yes. Yes and no, actually. Because it all depends on what we define as treasures, doesn't it?
That's right.
It does not mean that we overspend and collect a bunch of stuff for ourselves. And it does not mean to go out and purchase everything you think you need. Everybody? Because it says, are you laying up treasures for yourself upon earth where moth and rust and consume and where thieves break through and steal? Now looking at that picture, I'm sure whoever bought those cars locked those out there in their yard and said, I'm going to make some money on those one of these days. I'm going to be able to sell those things for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And look at them. What are they doing? Rusting away. Because they stored up those kind of treasures that aren't serving them, right? And how many of us can go in our closet or go in our drawers or go in our garages and find stuff that we haven't even remembered that we had, let alone worn or used in how many years? Yeah. Start digging that stuff out if you want to get in the flow of life, just spiritual understanding. Start digging that stuff out and passing it on. I've passed some treasures along, and I'll tell you what, it starts feeling good. I start getting more motivated, you know? And this is a perfect time of year to do that. And when we do that too, not only are we changing our spiritual consciousness, though, we're sending love. Because with all those things that we treasured and loved so much, when we send them out into the universe, guess what's going to happen? The love is going out with those things we loved because we loved them, right?
Yes.
And that love is going to be passed on. So you're going to come back and get more love too. It's that perfect way to make it a perfect time to bring forth all that perfect treasures that are supposed to be for you. You open up a space. Now the caveat is that we have to be in alignment with God. We can't like pick up this thing and say, oh gosh, my great aunt gave me that. And she's no longer with me. And I'll never have anything to remember her by. And then pass it on. That's not going to do you a bit of good, is it? But the minute you can go, oh yeah, she gave that to me. But you know, my favorite memory of her was blah, blah, blah. You know? Then you're freely giving it away and the love's still being passed on. That is where we need to come from. When we go to that place of, oh, I can't give this up because this is what I think my memory is attached to, guess what? We are putting our worth in not treasures. We're putting our worth in things that really don't mean a whole lot to us. And we're living in fear, believe it or not. We're living in fear at that place because, oh, you're fearful that you won't remember your great aunt. You know? No, that's not going to happen. You can trust and know that if you gave that thing away, those memories are still there. They're always there. And in fact, most people remember more stuff as they get older, don't they? Haven't you ever had a grandparent that started telling you a story and you're thinking, how did she remember when she was 3 years old? You know, she can't remember to tie her shoe, but she remembers when she was 3 years old. I mean, we've all been there. But I love this quote from Talks on Truth from Fillmore, and it says, the primal law of thought generation is the gluing of the ego to things that it consciously seeks. For where thy treasure is, there will thy heart be also. You cannot float out of the ethereal substance of the spirit with bags of gold in each hand. No floating. And we know we can't take it with us. I heard somebody say the other day, you've never seen a hearse with a U-Haul behind it. Who said that? I don't even know, but it was recently. Huh? Okay. So you can't, you know what I mean? And so we know we can't take it with us. And we also know we have to be good stewards of our money, right? I mean, we just don't go out and hang on to everything and become a hoarder, and we don't go out and give it all away and live in the poorhouse. Become a homeless person because we gave it all away. Because both of those are extremes on the continuum, right? And when we live in those extremes, we're living from that ego, because it definitely becomes all about us at that point. Oh, I am such a giving person. I gave all my millions away. What? Anyway, the ego, when not in alignment with spirit, will distort our thinking. It happens. And we will begin to grasp onto everything, and that's what makes us start collecting all that stuff again. Because we start building that wall of separation, and we live in fear. We live in fear that we're not going to have enough or be enough or do enough. And we come from that place of not having enough faith and trust in God and all that there is. But if you look at the middle of that statement, for where thy treasure is, there will thy heart be also. But where is your heart? And where do you want it to be? Do you want it to be filled with love and faith?
Yes.
Yeah, I should hear a big yes on that. Well,
Yes.
those attributes, yeah, those attributes are freely given to us and are aligned with God. And they also work together to strengthen our own spiritual understanding and help us along our spiritual journey. So how do we use love and faith as a catalyst to find our treasure? Well, the more we spiritually grow, the more we're tweaking our self-awareness. Do you realize that? Yeah. I mean, haven't you noticed, if you're coming to church on a regular basis, or you're taking a class on a regular basis and you're working on your spiritual growth, haven't you started noticing more things out there in the universe? I mean, just driving down the street, you'll start seeing more of the beauty, more of the joy. You'll start seeing that in friends. You'll be sitting there talking to your husband. No longer will you think, oh, that dirty dog. I'm such a kind mother. It can happen. But it's like tuning in the radio, you know? If you don't have it tuned in quite right, what happens? You just get a bunch of static, don't you? Kind of like that barking in the background. But once we tune it in, we get this clearer picture. It hones in on that awareness, and that's what we're doing as we move through this. And when we do that on the radio, what happens? The whole song sounds better, isn't it? We hear the words more clearly, and we can sing along. And that's a beautiful thing. That's the same perspective we have with God. When we're tuned in, when we're listening to what we're supposed to be listening to, we have a clearer understanding, a clearer coming through of what God is sending us. And we start realizing that the treasures are all around us. And that God is bringing those forth in our life. Because all we have to do is remember that God is in the midst. In every single situation. The day you couldn't pay your bills, God is in the midst. And what happened? Are those bills still sitting at home, that the ones you couldn't pay 10 years ago? No. I mean, I had an IRS bill. You know, they come after you. They'll take your wages, you know. But it was through the divorce and all this kind of stuff. But I had one that was $90,000. And I said, I'll never pay that off. That's at the time. I said, I'll never be able to pay that off. And then it's like, it's paid off. How did that happen? You know, because in that time I thought it was the end of the world, you know. And it happens. And of course this was, you know, hundreds of years ago in a different lifetime. But still, if I think about how much energy I exerted during that time, and if I had that energy now, well, I'll be probably ascended already, but hey. But we're not talking about something that's not obtainable, are we? We're talking about the truth, and that God is here right now. And through our consciousness, and ultimately the super consciousness, which is God coming through us, we can receive all of the messages that are ours. And in that awareness, the oneness brings forth the love and the faith we can ever need in any situation to continue to be in a state of love and faith. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Good, because when I wrote it, I kind of was like, okay, God, you want me to write this, but to me it's kind of sounding a little goofy. But the oneness brings forth all the love and faith we can ever need in any situation to continue to be in the state of love and faith. And how beautiful is that? Isn't that cool? And if we thought about it like that, I mean, all the time, it's just kind of like, oh, feels good. Feels wonderful. And when we're in that state of mind, it does feel good and wonderful, but sometimes we overthink things, don't we? Yeah. Our minds are constantly processing. Do you know our minds are even processing when we're sleeping? And we know this because we have dream workshops and we have all this kind of stuff. But every thought has its beginning, or hypotheses, right? And an ending, or a conclusion. And the time in between can be sweet and short, or it can be very laborious, can't it?
Yes.
And it is that time in between that we get hung up on. We can know the beginning of the story, and we can know the end of the story. But the time in between is where we can either waste energy or be in that energy, right? We can either struggle or we can be be moving freely. And that's where we need to do. We can't get into the drama. We can't get into the place of where it's causing us physical illness even. Because that can happen too. When we get in the middle of that whole thing, the beginning and the end, we can cause ourselves physical harm. We can, and if we do it by ourselves, sometimes it's not even the thing that's happening. Sometimes it's our own dramatization of the event that causes that physical illness. And we know that when the conclusion happens, what happens? What happened, happened, right? Whatever was in between there happened. And it was our choice of what we did with that time in between. Right? And no matter how much worry and struggle we caused during that time, it didn't change the ending, did it? No, the ending's going to be the ending. It's going to be what we say it is. But our out-of-aligned ego, when we let our ego get out of alignment with God, the Spirit, it tricks our brains into thinking we have to have the drama. We have to be in the all the woe me. We have to be all in those places. That's our ego tricking us. Now, ego can be a good thing. Don't get me wrong. We've talked about that before. But I'm saying when it is out of alignment with truth. Well, I found this study recently. You know I like those kind of things. But I found this study recently. It was about the reaction times that we make to making a decision. And some scientists at the Max Planck Institute for Human, Cognitive, and Brain Sciences did brain scans on people to see how quickly they responded to things. You know, and then they did it like with different hands and all this stuff. Well, what they discovered was that our brains know 7 seconds before we react what our decisions are going to be. Now think about that. That kind of makes you go, doesn't it? And it's amazing because to me, it was saying a direct link between our consciousness and our superconsciousness. And in other words, God is in that midst, helping us try to make that decision 7 seconds before we make it. You know, and if we had that awareness at the point of making that decision, then we would be in alignment with God. But sometimes what happens is we decide what it's going to be all about, don't we? We make it all about us, or we make it all about what we want, instead of allowing that decision to come forth. We overthink. We start rationalizing. We make our list. We start going, what's going to be the best thing? Oh my gosh, I don't know. Should I spend the money now? I don't know. You know, and there's no faith in that action. There's no love in that action, and we're not trusting. And we're ending up causing ourselves what? More turmoil. The cool thing was that we know at the core of our being, don't we?
Yes.
When we really know, we know at the core of our being. And what the deal is this brain activity showed up in the micro patterns of activity in the frontal polar cortex, a front portion of the brain. And the hypothalamus, I'm going to turn like this, even though the filming doesn't work right this way, but the hypothalamus gland is close to this area, and it links to the nervous system, to the endocrine system, which secretes hormones via the pituitary gland, also known as the hypophysis, from Greek, under nature to bring forth. Okay? So here is the frontal, this whole area here. And then this is the thalamus, okay? Now I'm going to show you another slide here in just a minute. But what I want to point out is the idea of this, under nature to bring forth. Who does that sound like? God. Hello. And do you think that might be that 7 seconds before we make a decision? Think about that. And I share this because what also came to mind through this whole exploration of this was over 100 years ago, Charles Fillmore connected the power of faith to the pineal gland, which produces melatonin and serotonin-derived hormones. We know that melatonin and serotonin what? Control sleep, appetite, and mood. And the pineal gland was also, he also connected it to the third eye, or the power of imagination, which is that invisible eye that guides us through the perception beyond ordinary sight. What does that sound like? Guides us beyond ordinary sight. God and faith, doesn't it? Yeah. And it is that creative, intuitive that can guide us, that intuitiveness that can guide us, right? And when he defined that and tapped it into the idea of imagination, guess what's on each side of imagination? In that frontal portal cortex. Wisdom, will and understanding. So, collectively, understanding this, we might say that our decision-making intuitiveness, which helps regulate our emotions through our nervous system, which in turn secretes hormones, is the underlying nature, capital N nature, which brings forth all decisions, which is God. And here is, so this area is the whole thing. And right in here is the pineal gland, okay? Right in that spot. I thought I had a different slide up here, but I think I changed it. So that little spot right there, if I go back to that, to this slide, it's that little speck in there, okay? But if that spot has to shoot to there to make that decision, and it knows 7 seconds before, maybe that is that 7 seconds in your brain to tap, to snap over to. So faith snaps in to your decision. And if we allow that 7 seconds to really just take a breath and turn within and say, whoa, I know God's given me the message. I know God is here. I know. Yeah. Isn't that powerful? Yeah. And to think that all of this kind of comes together over time and we bring it all forth. And guess what? We get to bring it forth. Each one of us sitting here because we just learned about this. And it's not our brains overthinking. No. It's allowing that alignment with God and the Spirit of God to come through us in the right and proper way. And when we get that in the way of that natural process, and I say natural with a capital N for God, that natural process that wants to happen in and through us, when we get in the way of that, guess what happens? Our hormones get out of whack, we get stressed out, we gain weight, because, all those hormones are right there in that mix. Everybody's trying to figure out why we gain weight. Well, hello. It's because we don't have enough trust. We don't have enough faith. We're not living from that presence of God each and every day. And we're not expressing that love and faith. I got a new diet plan coming through. Hey. And that's when we start thinking, going back to that ego thinking and thinking our lives are so messed up, don't we? Yeah. But all the while, all we have to do is align with that frontopolar cortex, don't we? And we allow that natural response to come through. And that's going to bring forth our highest good, isn't it? And we don't think we have to be the ones to make it all happen. Because guess what? What we think is going to happen here at the beginning, it's already going to happen. We already know it's going to happen. We don't even have to plan the ending because it's going to be there. The highest good is going to be coming forth for us. And, our thinking sometimes has been construed through what we've been taught. We were taught that we were born and that we live and then we die. Yeah, you say it with me. Yeah. And the hypothesis is that we are born. And the conclusion is we die. And what is lying in between is our daily living. So how do you want to live life is the question. Yeah, I want to live life with faith and trust and love, don't you? Yeah. And all we need to do is spend more time just being. And I'm talking, again, with capital B. Because if we are in alignment with God, then we have done our work. We have done our meditation time. We have done our prayer time. We have changed our thinking. We are no longer sending hate to anybody. We are no longer getting in that distrustful mood. We are no longer letting ego get in the way. We're taking those breaths and allowing that seconds to bring forth those decisions that are from God. And guess what will happen then? Our lives will be grand, won't they? We'll all be walking around with a smile on our face and be happy to see whatever it is. And all the treasures that are there for us are going to be demonstrated and manifested in our lives because we're coming from that place. Our wonderful brain, sometimes we can limit ourselves, but I already said that one. Our wonderful brain operates by the God-given powers of love and faith, and we are in perfect balance with all the powers, and through the powers of understanding and will, we can creatively express using the power of imagination. We can easily let go. We sing that before service. Let go of what does not serve us and align with divine order to allow our life to unfold perfectly as an expression of God. And this is the alignment of the Christ, or the I am. And the I am is that Christ within us. And that I am are defined by those 12 powers that Fillmore gave us. And this is a little 12 power guy up there. And if we would align with these, Fillmore believed that we would be regenerated. That we would always be in that state of being and never have to worry about a thing. But we can use these powers to bring forth that spirit, mind, and body into that perfect expression. And the 12 powers are wonderful treasures for us to explore and understand in our mind and bodies and to align with spiritually. And all we have to do is start working with love and faith right now. That's all we have to do. Just keep focusing on love and faith. And we can easily do this because they're always within us, ready to come forth. And that is what birth is about. That is why we won't have to ever worry about death in our lives, because we will be continually living life even beyond this physical body. Now, Fillmore defined these powers not only by parts in our bodies, but he also aligned them with the 12 disciples. And that's kind of fun to study because it helps you metaphysically interpret the New Testament a little bit better. But there's a story about Peter who represents faith, which I think is kind of powerful and taps into this whole idea of us not trusting. And we're going to use it today. And what happened was Jesus was starting to begin to collect his disciples, okay? And Peter was, out in the boat, and he was not catching any fish. And quite frankly, he was pretty aggravated about the whole thing. And Jesus calls his first disciple from Luke 5:3-5. And he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and asked him to put out a little way from the land. And he sat down and he began teaching to the people. All the people were on the shore out there, okay? And Jesus was just talking away to him, teaching everything. And when he finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch on the other side of the boat." Simon answered and said, "Master, we worked hard all night and caught nothing, but I will do as you say and let down the nets." How many people have ever been in that place before? I've been working for hours on this and nothing is happening. What should we do in that moment? How about stop and take a breath and allow that 7 seconds to come zooming forth with all the faith in the world that you need? And what Fillmore else wrote about this story was this: Simon, the first disciple of Jesus, represents a receptive attitude of mind. Simon means hearing, listening for the inner voice and obeying it. When he says, "Put it out into the deep and let down your nets for a draught," when the thinking faculty is obedient and does what it is told, it is always rewarded with a great multitude of fishes or new ideas. It is then counted worthy to be a disciple of the Master, and its name is changed to Peter. And that's how Simon became Peter. So who do you want to be? Do you want to be Simon or do you want to be Peter?
Peter.
And you know what? Very good. I heard somebody say both. Because you can start out being Simon. Being that receptive, okay, look what he said, receptive attitude of mind. We can start out there.